This is the second hour of today's What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. We're talking about solutions in the form of the power of true positive thinking and how that differs from the New Age notion of positive thinking, and talking about the responsibility to teach others, which I was just bridging into as part of that segue at the end of the last hour. So many people within certain New Age circles also have accepted that it's only about changing yourself. Well, the dynamic of the total change that could possibly happen on a societal scale is about changing oneself. But how do you think that that's going to be possible if you're not putting information out there into the world to influence that change? And it is about making people pay attention to it by putting it out there in such a way that it cannot be ignored. See, that's the problem. We're still so fringe and our numbers are so small that people can just ignore it and say, well, this is the other thing that people who don't want to accept reality always talk about, and I get crazy when I hear them say this. Oh, how many people think like that? As if that makes a difference. As if it matters the number of people that are saying something, as if that has anything whatsoever to do with whether something is true or not. I ask people all the time, if 7 billion people are repeating a lie, does that suddenly make it a truth? No, it just means 7 billion people have accepted a lie and don't know what the truth is regarding that thing. But the lie remains a lie. And if only one person speaks a truth and 7 billion other people think he's crazy, does that suddenly make it not true? No, of course not. If one person speaks a truth, and it is true, it remains true regardless of how many people reject it. The truth remains the truth, even if no one accepts it. And a lie will remain a lie even if everyone accepts it. And people have to understand that. And you know, this is what you hear a lot of times with these closed down people. Because they have no confidence or faith in themselves to be able to recognize truth from deception, and they just want to graft on the numbers of people. Well, if this is the status quo and more people think this than other people, then that must be the truth, when in fact nothing could be farther from being true. As a matter of fact, the more generally accepted something is, you can almost guarantee there's some aspect of falsehood and deception within it. But true common sense is what we're trying to develop here. People being aligned with what actually is. And once you have acquired that in yourself, and you know that that's the case, you don't just believe it, you know, and you know through direct experience, you can test this in your life. The quality of your life will change for the better or the worse as you test the parameters of natural law. Many people have done experiments regarding this. I tell people, check out the works of Richard Wetherill, who shows enormous examples in the way of how the laws of nature regarding consciousness and right and wrong, the consequences of our actions, can be tested repeatedly over and over again with the same results. You know, it's a science, and science is works through a method of discovery, the scientific method, that involves repeatability and understanding through observation, direct observation, gnosis. Natural law is no different. Once we have acquired this understanding of how we are creating our own experience, then we inherently, by taking in that knowledge, we have also taken with it a responsibility. This is part of the reason so many people do not want that knowledge. They want to remain eternal children. And they want to sit back and they want to not be involved. But that's impossible. If you're here, you're involved. And part of our taking knowledge into ourselves is the understanding that with it comes responsibility to teach others. And this is the second part of the conversation here today, which is, what do we need to do to really affect change in other people. Okay? What do we need to do to fully step into our role as a teacher? Again, I'm not doing this radio show just to help make other people aware. And in that sense, I am not doing what is called horizontal integration. It has been called by many people horizontal integration. I've explained this briefly before, and I want to clarify, because so many people constantly think that my goal for this radio show is something different than what it is. They think I'm trying to reach the asleep masses, and I am not and never have been trying to do that. Okay? I am trying to reach the people who are capable of going out into society and teaching those asleep masses. In other words, what I'm trying to do, and maybe some of my work will do that, and somebody who's completely asleep will encounter it and wake up from it. It's possible, but that's not my intent. Okay, my intent is something somewhat different than that. And if that happens as a result, wonderful. Okay, if that happens as an ancillary effect, then great. I began this show and all of the stuff that's on my website to try to identify and pull forward the people with the willpower to become a teacher of this information. So all of this that I've done so far, all of the work I've put out there, is not to reach the end result people. It's not to reach the people on the fringe who are totally in the matrix, quote unquote, so to speak. They're totally engulfed in the illusion. I'm trying to build a platform here that can help to influence people to become a teacher for this information, and therefore, instead of there being one person who's putting out some info, we have 1,000 or 10,000 or 1 million. And then the message is everywhere. So what I'm attempting to do here is to influence someone else to step into the role of a teacher. And, I in no way have ever accepted and will never accept the appellation or tagline of leader in any form or fashion. I've said from day one, I'm no one's leader. I'm not going to be your leader. You have to be your own leader. Okay? But I have accepted the tagline, or whatever you want to call it, the appellation of teacher. Because that's what I'm doing. I'm teaching spiritual truths about how our reality, the experience of our reality, is created, and how we're the ones who are creating it. There's no one else here creating the experience of our reality except us. Aside from setting aside nature, okay, natural laws, weather phenomenon, things like that, okay, that creates a part of our reality. That's the randomness aspect of our reality. But as far as the deterministic aspect of the reality, there is natural law, and then we have a free will whether to come into accordance with it or to flagrantly violate it. And therefore that's setting another aspect of our experience. That's determining another aspect of our experience. Natural law is not negotiable, but our actions are changeable. Okay? So what I'm trying to develop here is other people who know natural law well enough that they can then go out and teach it to other people, so we stop choosing poorly, unwisely, and creating effects, creating manifestations that only lead to more self-inflicted suffering. That's the goal of this show, which I don't know if I ever really clearly stated, from day one. People think, Mark, you're trying to reach all of these people. I'm not trying to build horizontally and reach the quote-unquote dead. One person cannot do that. Maybe 1 million teachers with this level of knowledge could. It's dispersed throughout the world. Then we'd have a real game on our hands instead of the slaughter fest that's taking place right now with people who don't have any knowledge of the entire workings of the game that's going on. Quote-unquote game. If we had 1 million teachers with deep understanding of natural law, maybe we'd be having an impact. Maybe we'd be putting a dent in the dominator's agenda. But, so many people are still largely asleep to that aspect of things, even though they know that there's a problem. They know that freedom's on the decline. But again, they're all about their freedom. They're not interested in understanding natural law. So many of them want to deny themselves that exists and put labels on it as a religion or something. When I've said from day one, this has nothing to do with belief, nothing to do with religion. This is a science of how nature operates. But it is an unseen, these laws are largely unseen, and you only acquire knowledge about them through experience and the testing of that working of that natural law by testing it through behaviors and finding out what you'll get. In other words, an expression, just like genetics. A lot of times, the science of genetics is a hit or miss strategy. You have to do your splicing and then see what expresses in a particular culture. And then you find out what the manifestation or the expression is. The testing of natural law works the same way as a science of like genetic manipulation. You have to test it, see what expresses, and now you have knowledge of, if you do this, then that results. Like an if-then statement. Because ultimately, folks, this is all a computer. This whole reality is a computer. And natural law is the if-then statement of the programmer. If you choose to do this with free will, then you will get this manifestation or result. In that respect, this entire reality is so much like a computer program that's running. Now, I probably would go so far to say that it is a computer program that's running. But that's for another show. Let's talk about one's responsibility once you have this kind of knowledge to then communicate it to others. And I will use the term forcefully communicate it to others. Okay, not violently communicate it to others. There's a big difference. Force means you're standing within the force of truth. And you're not going to just baby spoon feed it or back off when the person shows you that they're going to be resistant to it. You're going to say, this is your belief right now, but you're still incorrect. There is a reality to this that doesn't involve how you believe currently. And you're still wrong and you're still causing harm to yourself and others. That's when I talk to people who are asleep and are giving me a lot of resistance to what I'm saying, that's what I tell them. I don't sugarcoat it a bit. You are doing disservice to others by sugarcoating the way things are. You're keeping them babies. You're keeping them babies. Don't worry about what their sensibilities in ego are. Hammer them with the truth. Hammer them with the truth. The more you baby spoon feed them, the more they're going to stay attached and think that what they're doing is okay. Staying in the level of ignorance that they're staying in, believing in the level of illusion that they believe in, they're going to continue to think, oh, this isn't causing any harm. That's just one person who had a quirky, weird idea, and, I told him I absolutely, completely believe otherwise, and now he's not saying anything to me anymore, so he just must have been a fringe nut that, and I'll go back to believing what I was originally thinking. We have to cut through the signal with force. They're constantly under a bombardment of poison food and poison information. We need to cut through the signal with force. Force is going to cut through the signal. Not laying down to their ego. The ego has to be fought in this regard. It's a war. You're not going to baby spoon feed the ego out of existence. It's not going to happen that way. The ego has to be broken. Here's that word again. The person, through the process of the breaking of the ego, is going to become unbroken. They're not going to be dismembered anymore. They will be remembering their true self, putting it back together, building something that's strong. Okay? The ego is what has to be directly encountered. Directly encountered. Because look, you look at it this way. if the ego isn't directly encountered, at some point there's going to be a collapse which directly encounters the ego, which is using force to break it down one way or another. I've said it before. Nature's going to solve this problem if we do not. And it can solve it in a billion different ways of its choosing, of its design, and in its time. And it's going to solve it for us if we don't do it for ourselves. Because the ego in its current rulership is going to be smashed. If it has to be done through the forces of nature, then nature will eventually do that. Because this level of rebellion is not going to be tolerated for eternity. It just will not. I suggest we engage that force and smash the ego by the power of our will. And that means when somebody's in a level of resistance, you have to stand forcefully in the truth and not back down. And you be willing to use the words, you are simply wrong. You are incorrect and think you are correct. Okay? You are incorrect. Incorrect thought leads to incorrect action, which leads to incorrect results or manifestations under natural law. And there is no baby spoon-feeding way to get somebody out of that. You have to say, this is what you say you want, yet what you're doing is in complete contradiction to that, and therefore you're going to get the opposite. That's it. And the universe doesn't care. The universe does not care that you don't understand that. It doesn't care. The universe isn't a person who cares like you care about something. To attribute emotion to all creation in the same sense that you look at human emotion is a totally 100% flawed viewpoint to look at creation from. You have to look at creation from a perspective of a computer program. It does not care whether you as the programmer have zero knowledge of what you're doing. It's still going to spit back onto the screen, which is what your experience is, okay? What you programmed into it. Whether you're a master programmer or you're a complete drooling idiot who has no clue what you're doing, banging on the keyboard, you're going to get a result that you put into it. The end. It's going to say, here's the input, I process it, and manifest the output. And that's it. And this is what people have to do when they're teaching. Be as dispassionate and actually cold about it. You could say it's very passionate because, yeah, you're getting fired up over trying to explain to somebody how something works. But I'm talking about in engaging the ego. You're talking to the ego to try to break it down. It has the person. See, people say, well, everybody has an ego. Wrong. Everybody does not have an ego. The ego has everybody. It's exactly the other way around. Or I should say the ego has almost everybody. The point here is to destroy the hold that the ego has over the being. Because that's what's keeping them in that broken state, in that enslaved state. So in beginning to teach, the first thing you have to recognize is you have to be dispassionate about what someone thinks now and simply engage it as forcefully in truth as you can. You are doing no service to somebody by giving them tiny little baby spoon. In other words, what I'm saying is don't be gentle on their ego. You can be gentle with the amount that you feed them in any one given time. But if you're talking, and that's an important thing to distinguish, okay? Whether you're being forceful with whether the information is true or not doesn't mean that you need to be forceful with the amount that you're giving them. That, I would say, okay, you can't cram so much down somebody's throat at one time that they are overloaded. I certainly didn't take in all of this information at one time. I did it over a period of years. But my case of the ego wasn't so deep. Even being a priest in the Church of Satan, my ego wasn't so deep that I could not recognize the truth when I was hearing it and ultimately admit that I was wrong. The problem is I was a mild case of how much the ego had me. compared to where most people are at. Most people, the ego has them so fully and totally that you can barely see the light at the end of the tunnel, a pinprick of light coming through from the box that the ego has them in. So you can't try to give it all to somebody at one time. But what I am telling somebody to do is stay forceful in speaking the truth and don't back down when the ego responds. You have to recognize that's not the being responding. The ego still has the being. It's the ego responding. You're talking to a program that is running, that has the being and has broken it to its will, so that being can never see outside of its parameters, its programming. So let's look at the power of words in this regard, because that's what teaching is all about. What we're talking about here is all about the power of words. Words. Okay? The universe is spoken into existence. The universe is spoken into existence. That's how creation is done, through word, the logos, the power of the word. Someone who I consider a teacher, Terence McKenna, once said that the world is made of words, and if we know the words the world is made of, that we can make of it whatever we wish. Extremely powerful and poignant if you know what it means. If you know what it means, what is the power of the word? The word reached me through other teachers. I put their information together, completely amalgamated it all. Accrued it, assembled it, put it together, and saw the big picture. If it wasn't for all of those people putting forward the word, their words, I could not have changed myself. They were alchemists in my alchemical awakening in that process. Just like you have to strive to be that alchemist or that assistant in the awakening process for another person. And I say to people every day, if I had more help, this process would go faster. All of the alchemists in the world, they need more help. This is the clarion call, the trumpet blaring to come forward and be a teacher. You knowing is not enough. You knowing is not enough. You have to teach others. That is your responsibility once you have come to a place of knowing. And you're going to encounter extreme resistance. It's the hardest work there is to do. To speak the universe into existence, to change the current conditions, is the hardest work there is to do. That's why so few want to do it. That's why so few are doing it. That's why the ones who are doing it are feeling drained and with low energy, because there's no one to tag out to. There's no one to tag out to. If this were common sense knowledge, you ever hear the phrase, many hands make light work? That's what we're talking about here. There's so few people who know and are speaking the truth in their responsibility that it's a burden at this time and place to even do it. I look at it as probably souls who are coming in here with a lot of spiritual knowledge are thinking, why would I want to go in there? Hardly anybody's helping. That means all the weight's going to be on my back. And that's the case on earth. The world is plunged in darkness, and most people don't want to help to enlighten it. Like Carl Jung said, enlightenment is not imagining figures of light, but it is making the darkness conscious. Making it conscious through constant effort. That's what real alchemy is. Constant effort. Constant effort. Not just saying, oh, well, he doesn't want to hear it and that's it, I'm done with him. No. Continue to speak it. If no one is willing to hear it, it doesn't matter. We are charged with speaking the truth into creation. That is our charge as teachers. For those who are listening and thinking about, the attempt at this work, to begin to try, that's who I'm trying to reach. To build horizontal integration We need more people who are fully awake, not a whole bunch of people who are half-ass awake. That's not going to help anybody. We need fully awake people. Even if you're not perfect, no one is perfect. You're engaging in a pipe dream thinking you're going to have to reach some kind of spiritual perfection that doesn't exist before you start saying a word to anybody. One of my biggest laments is I waited as long as I did to start doing what I do, because I knew it for years before I started speaking it. But I wanted to get better. I wanted to improve myself even more and more and more, and not begin, actually putting information out there. I wanted to vet the information enough that I knew I wasn't going to be doing harm by putting it out there. And I almost look at it as it was a bad decision in some ways, because I feel I waited too long to even begin. We need more teachers that are fully conscious to come out there and start working with others. That's what our work is. Our work is not just to work on ourselves. That's the beginning. Anybody that's telling you that's the be-all and end-all is either a liar, a deceiver, or a useful idiot. That's the beginning of the process. Working with others is where it needs to go. So, what is required in that process? Well, I have a simple catchphrase. The 3 R's will lead to the 3 C's. Okay? The 3 R's that lead to the 3 C's. Okay? And if you want to then take it further, ultimately, the big A. Okay? That's what we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about 7 words in a 7-step process, which is what becoming a teacher is all about. And this is respect, remembrance, responsibility, conscience, conversion, conviction, and atonement. And the power of these words when we break them down. People have obviously heard all of those words, but many people don't even know what they mean, even from an etymological perspective, from the perspective of the roots of these words and their origins in language. Where do these English language words come from? Well, we've talked about respect a lot on the show, and this is the first thing one ultimately needs. Again, if you don't have self-respect, you can't begin to teach others. Because that means you can't possibly have any respect for them, for the student. While I'm not advocating being non-harsh on the student, or, in other words, baby spoon feeding them the truth, that doesn't mean you don't have respect for them. And what I mean by respect is true respect. It comes from the Latin language. Re is a prefix in Latin that means again. And now we're on image number 7 in the slideshow on the website or with the podcast. The word re, the prefix re in Latin means again. And the second part of respect, spect, comes from the Latin verb spectare, specto spectare, which means to look at. So you put them together, and respect simply means to look at again, to take another look at, to re-examine. Well, what are you re-examining that means the true development of respect? You're re-examining the self. You're taking another look at yourself. That's what true respect is, to look again at yourself. It's right in the word. The meaning is right in the word. You just have to know where the word came from in ancient languages. So real respect means you've taken a look at the truth, you've taken another look at yourself, whether you're in alignment with that truth or not, and now you're working with yourself to bring yourself into alignment and accord with that truth. That's real respect. So unless you're embodying the truth, you don't really have true self-respect. If you're not living the truth in your own life, I would suggest don't try to become a teacher, because that means ultimately you're hypocritical. And somebody else is going to look at your actions and say, well, you're not doing this. How do you expect me to do it? The old phrase of the Buddha, a child being brought to him after a long trek and the parents saying, my child keeps eating candy that's no good for him. Can you please explain to him why that's bad and to tell him to stop doing it? And the Buddha says, well, I can't do that. You'll have to come back in a month. And he goes, I just made a huge journey across hundreds of miles to have an audience with you, and you're telling me to come back in a month? Yes, you'll have to come back in a month. The man comes back with the child in a month, and the Buddha says immediately, child, stop eating that candy that's no good for you and is doing harm to your body. And the guy says, why couldn't you just do that before? And he says, because I was still eating that, and I couldn't tell him to do it when I was still doing it because I'd be a hypocrite. So this is what I'm talking about. If you have true self-respect, your actions are not going to be in contradiction with your thoughts and emotions. And therefore, you're going to be really effective. You'd be ineffective as a teacher if you don't have that level of true self-respect. You'll be the most effective as a teacher if you truly have taken another look at yourself and then corrected those actions within yourself. The next R is remembrance. Okay? And one more thing about respect. People think respect is something that you give to someone else. It is not. It is something that you develop within the self. That's what real respect is. So then you can see the aspect of the divine in someone else and treat them accordingly as you would treat yourself. That's what offering self-respect is. It isn't something, you can't give something to someone else that you don't first have not acquired yourself. You can't give someone a cake unless you have it first. You have to have it in order to give it. So you have to have respect in order to give respect. This is where people confuse the actual meaning of the term. So the second term is remembrance. We talked about being broken. Most people are broken. They're disassembled. They are dismembered. Their consciousness is fragmented. It's all over the place. We're largely, as humanity, fragmented beings. Our thoughts, emotions, and actions are not aligned. They are not unified. They are not unified. Okay? They are completely separated. They are broken down. They are in contradiction with each other, and they are dismembered. Dismembered means torn apart, ripped up, broken up. Okay? The process of remembering means to bring back together. You are putting the pieces together, not only of the truth, but of your own consciousness. You're bringing together all of the aspects of the self, and you're putting it all back together. Okay? Like pieces of a puzzle that have been scattered all over the place. That's what we need to do with ourselves once we have developed respect. There is a process in this. It is a stepwise linear process. Respect has to come first in aspirations for one being a teacher for this information to others. I'm not saying these are hard and fast rules. I would consider these general guidelines. I'm not the authority on this. Okay? I would say that I'm putting forward some general guidelines that will help people. The understanding of this helped me when I was getting ready to come forward and start speaking. Okay? So I feel if it helped me, it can help other people. And it has held true to this day. So remembrance means you've truly remembered who you are. You're not engaged in the world. You're in the world, but not of it. You're not engaged from a 5 sense perspective only, or a left brain perspective only. If that's the case, you haven't really remembered. You haven't truly been reminded of who you are. That's what remembering is. It's a reminder, like an alarm going off. Okay? We have to be reminded, which is also, think about it, reminded, to reacquire the mind. Okay? To put the mind back together, getting a new mind. People say, well, what can I do? The first thing you need to do is change your thoughts. You need a new mind, a new perspective on everything in life, a whole new worldview. If you don't have that new healed worldview, if you have not been reminded, then you're not truly remembered. You're not put back together yet. There's parts of you that are still broken. And then going and spreading that to other people is going to have a poisonous or deleterious effect upon them. You're not really assisting in the alchemical process. So we have to make sure that we have true self-respect developed within ourselves and that we have truly remembered that which we are as a being that is within all consciousness, that is an aspect of all eternal consciousness, and is not just a 5 sense being. We're having the expression or the experience of being a 5 sense being, but we are ultimately a spiritual being. And being reminded, the process of remembering is about is about developing a new mind, from the old poisoned worldview mind to a new healed worldview mind. And if that's not the case, like I said, we're going to be doing a disservice to others when we start bringing this information to them. It doesn't, again, mean that you can't have any harsh words for others or tell them that they just have their head up their ass when they need to just hear that. Because that's the case with many people. With many people, they're just completely wrong, brainwashed, and totally have their head up their ass. To be quite frank, harsh, and honest about it. That's the case. You know, I'm not trying to tell people everybody is in a great place and this is going to be easy work. You're going to practically be trying to do what has been considered throughout the ages to be practically impossible. It's not impossible. See, that's part of healing the worldview, recognizing that it's possible to do, but we just need more help in doing it. We need to awaken more teachers. Only until more teachers are awakened are we going to ever reach the masses. The amount of teachers in the world is not sufficient to awaken the masses of sleeping cattle. Let me just say that again. The amount of teachers currently present in the world who are fully awake is not sufficient to awaken the hordes of sleeping cattle that exist on the earth. It's impossible from where we're at now. What we need to do is awaken more teachers to the extreme level of awakening, the totality of it. Then it will become possible, and we will start making a dent and an impact on the masses, quote unquote. That's what the goal of this show again has been, to try to remind the potential teachers who are here that this is their responsibility, which brings us to the next thing, true responsibility and what it is. This is slide number 9. True responsibility means fully owning everything that we do. Fully owning our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions, and what we're putting out into the world that's going to lead to a manifestation. And that means that we are taking 100% full ownership of our inherent ability to respond to a given situation within the parameters of natural law. And I'll say that again. We're taking full ownership of our inherent ability as a human being to respond in the world to any given situation within the parameters of natural law. That's what responsibility is. It's responsibility. You know, just because the end phrase is responsibility, okay, it's just a way of making a verb into a noun. Responsible, responsibility, an adjective and then a noun. Response, responsible, responsibility. Well, being responsible, having responsibility, we're really saying the responsibility with an A. It's our ability to respond within the parameters of natural law. And this is what the control system wants to usurp from us and say, oh, you're not responsible. We're the responsible ones, and you'll do what we say to do and not do what we say that you may not do. You know, they want to take that away from people. And that's why we have such an irresponsible society. People have believed in their claim that we're the responsible ones as the, quote, government, and the, quote, authorities, and we'll be responsible, and everybody else is just children, and we're the parents taking care of the children. And we wonder, when billions of people have accepted that lie, we wonder why there's so few truly responsible people in the world. True responsibility is about owning your actions. It's about not engaging in cop-outs, okay, and saying, oh, well, I'm doing harm, but it was only my job to do it. I was told it was okay. No cop-outs. Take full ownership of your behavior. If you're causing harm with your behavior, take the apophatic approach and stop doing it. Say no. And that's what most people refuse to do. They're so afraid of the consequences for stopping doing an action that they're already doing that is causing harm. Well, we have to get out of that level of fear and say, I'm not going to be made to engage in a behavior that is causing harm to another person. And I'm going to stop doing it. I don't care if I starve to death in the street, I'm going to stop doing it. I'm not going to give a dime, a penny, an iota of energy to someone to go and wage war. I'm not going to do it. You know, I'm not going to give one iota of energy to a system that is enslaving me and everybody else and is willing to usurp somebody else's natural rights. You're going to have to kill me, but then you'll have a body to clean up, but I'm not going to cooperate with your agenda in any form or fashion. And people want to turn that around and say, well, because you eat, you're somehow involved in that because, there may be taxes on this food item or that food item. Look, I'm talking about how it is within your ability to pull back from the system and still be in the world. In the world, not of the world. That doesn't mean that because I want to teach people what's really going on, I can't interact in any form in society. I'd have to go live in the forest or something. This is what some lunatics actually believe not cooperating with the system is. And here's another big crock of bullshit, if I may say so myself, that people actually believe, well, if you want to live free and you want to, maintain the ability and not be a hypocrite, then you need to go live in the forest away from society. Well, you know what? You could take that whole nonsense and cram it where the sun doesn't shine. Okay? Because I have the right to be in society and eat. Okay? They're my natural rights. And that's where I'm going to engage the people with information. I'm not going to engage them in the forest someplace. So nobody's going to tell me because I have views that are in accordance with truth and natural law, and just because they differ from the brainwashed cattle, that I'm not going to stay in society, be able to eat, be able to protect myself from the elements, and be able to speak the truth to other people. So again, you could take that and cram it where you know where. Okay? The attitude of if you don't agree with the people who run the society now, or quote unquote, you're a hypocrite because you live in a house, or that you eat food because you can't 100% pull back. I'm going to pull back from cooperating with the system with whatever is within my ability to do. Maybe even if it means I end up on the street, and then I'll speak the truth from the street if I had to. I currently live in a place that is made possible by someone else helping me and being able to and supporting my work. Otherwise, I probably would already be in the street. But the point here is, don't tell me I need to go live in the street or I need to go live in the woods someplace to speak the truth. All right, that is not what I'm talking about here as far as pulling back from the system. Okay, pulling back from the system, I'm talking about stop complying with all of the ways that are clearly in opposition to someone else's natural law rights. Stop working for the government. Stop working for the police. Stop working for the military. If you're involved in that in any capacity, you can't be truly reminded or remembered. You are still torn apart in some form or fashion, and you're still ultimately complying with the system. So true responsibility is owning that action and saying, I'm not going to do it anymore. I know that this is my action, and you're not going to use it for this purpose. I know what the real purpose is, and I'm going to stop doing it, even if it means in the short term I may suffer. That's what real taking full ownership of your responsibility is all about. Now, let's look at the 3 C's, which is what these 3 R's. If we put together these 3 R's, the respect, remembrance, and responsibility, into effect in our lives, what it's going to lead to is the 3 things that are ultimately necessary for the manifestation of true awakening in the population and true healing. In other words, the true solution, the real solution that is really going to create lasting positive change for the betterment of everyone in our world, and the reestablishing of our natural rights and true freedom, is conscience, conversion, and conviction. It all starts with conscience. If you have developed self-respect, truly remembered who you are and owned your own personal responsibility, you are going to come into the full expression of conscience, the definitive knowledge of the objective difference between right and wrong. Knowledge is what conscience is. Okay? It comes from the Latin language, con, a prefix meaning together, and scio, sciere, meaning to know or to understand. To know or to understand. Putting those together, we're on slide number 10 now, we get to know together or to understand together. That's what conscience is. Conscience is common sense. It's common sense knowledge of the difference between right and wrong. Many people don't understand conscience as knowledge or as understanding. They think of it as action. The exercise of your conscience is action that is in accordance with your conscience, that is in accordance with natural law, in accordance with the laws of right and wrong. So, conscience is the understanding. The application of conscience is wisdom. All right? Conscience is the knowledge and understanding, and then putting that into practice in one's life, which turns it into wisdom, is the exercise of one's conscience. So that's what conscience is about, and that has to be the first thing that is like fully developed. This is what, if that's fully developed in ourselves, then we're going to be able to take that development to other people and make them and help them to make themselves into a being that is awake in that respect and has developed conscience or common sense knowledge, and is then practicing that in their life through applying it, through exercising right action. The second C is creating a conversion. And the reason it's number 2 is because the true change cannot be made without conscience first being in place. Okay? The conversion is the change that we're ultimately looking for. The change that we want to create comes from the Latin language also. It comes from con, which means together, as we saw in conscience, and the verb verso versare, which means to change. Versare means to change in Latin. So what we're looking to create is the great change, the conversion, the worldview shift, the paradigm shift, as they call it in certain circles. Okay, the complete change in the collective worldview of humanity, and ultimately then the behaviors of humanity, to bring those behaviors into accordance with natural law parameters. Conversion comes from Latin. It means to change together. Conversare, to change together. Okay, so creating a conversion, a mass change. See, people look at this as a religious word. Well, he had a conversion. This is only one connotation of the word. We're trying to create a conversion together. A conversion not to any religion, but a conversion to the truth that is beyond all religion. Religion is what's holding us back from the truth, from the Latin religare, meaning to hold back, to tie back, to thwart from forward progress. The real conversion is going to take us out of the religion, the things that hold us back. You know, and in the sense of the true meaning of religion, the positive connotation of the term, religare can mean to reunite with, to retie to the truth and to the light, to reunite with the truth. That's what a real conversion is going to bring about, reuniting us with the truth, with God, if you will. So, conversion is what we're trying to create, a mass change, all changing together for the better. And that is made possible through conversation, the power of the word. This is why these words are almost identical, conversion, conversation. And look, break them down in green language terms, in alchemical green language, conversion. Con means together, verso versare means to change, conversion. Converse, I on. Converse, I on. When the I goes on, there's a great change together. There's a change that's happening together. The I on. Okay? Or you can look at it as changing the I on together, changing the all-seeing I that exists within all of us, the spark of the divine. Turning that on, the idea of the awakened all-seeing I being the full expression of consciousness, awake within the individual. Look at the word conversation. Conversare, at I on. Converse at I on. It's right in the word, folks. Right in the word. All you got to do is break it down. To change together at the I on, at the third eye, at the place of spiritual understanding, spiritual awakening. That's what a conversation makes possible. Unless you're willing to talk to other people and forcefully stand in your truth and help to get them to an accurate understanding of what's really taking place and in the spiritual laws of creation that we're operating within, whether we understand it or not. We need to converse in order to do that. To have a conversation with others. The universe is spoken into existence. The reason that the bad guys are winning, folks, is because they're engaging in the word. Their signal is always bombarding people. 24 hours a day. I go into anybody's house in my family who is asleep, guaranteed that television is on and blaring, and more often times than not, it's on a channel that's on the propaganda news. Almost guaranteed. Every time. Their signal is always on. And until we can cut into that signal and stop it from reaching the brains of other people, we're not getting out of this cage. And that's our task, to override that signal with a trumpet blare of truth that is so loud that it drowns out that poison signal. That's how many people we need speaking the truth. That they can't get away from it. That's what I mean when I say force. That everywhere they go, they're going to see the truth. They're going to hear it, they're going to see it, it's going to be being spoken in their presence. And people say to me, this is all you do, Mark. You don't do anything else. They look at it as, can't you see that that's not balanced? Yes, I can see that. What do you think I'm trying to do with this show? I want to be able to tag out. I want more people at the level of knowledge as me and with the willpower that I have to teach this. I don't have that opportunity. I don't have that comfort. There isn't that, there's a million other people that got this thing. That's not present. So I can't afford to just stop doing it. And you know what? I have a problem with that. If I told you I didn't have a problem with that, I'd be lying. I don't like it the way it is. It's a burden. I've said this a million times. Many hands make lighter work. Do we have enough people? No. So there is an incredible weight upon the people who do truly understand this. All of this information. And the call is going out that if you understand it, you've got to stand in your truth and deal with the people who don't. That's what our work is. That's the great work, in case you haven't figured it out yet. It isn't about just knowing and saying, I'm okay, or I'm going to try to escape, or I'm going to try to make my nice little comfortable hovel someplace and go bury myself in it. If that's your attitude, you don't understand anything. It's about engaging the darkness and making it into the light. And that's the hardest work there is to do, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why so few people are doing it. But if we do it, and we're successful in that great change, we would come to slide number 12, which is conviction. And again, just break down the word. Now, this is part of why they want to say, part of why the controllers use the word convict, meaning someone in a prison. This is the inversion of green language. They know what convict really means. So they use that term deliberately to represent a prisoner. Someone who stands convicted. But when in fact that's what we need to have, conviction. We need to stand convicted. Well, why do I say that? Because I know what the word conviction actually means. It comes from the Latin, con, together, and vinco vincere, or vincio vincere, which means to win. To win. People have heard the phrase, Veni, Vidi, Vici, or as it's really pronounced, Veni, Vidi, Vici in Latin. I came, I saw, I conquered. I came, I saw, I won. The last part of it, Vinci, comes from victory. To win. It's the verb to win in Latin, vincere. So, put them together. Con, vincere, to win together. To have arrived at a place of true conviction is to have won together. You know, they want to tell you that a convict or a conviction is a bad thing. Well, in the sense of it being a prisoner, that's why they're using it in that term. To take you, make it have a negative connotation in your mind. When in fact, becoming convinced and fully knowing the truth without any doubt is where we have to get to. When we do that, then we will have won together. We will have won together. We will have arrived at a place of true conviction, which is what we're really saying is the willpower to live an honest life. The conviction that we need to develop to truly live in the parameters of truth and natural law. When we do that, when we develop the 3 R's which lead to the 3 C's, as we've talked about on this show, ultimately we will arrive at a place of atonement. And we just need to look at this from both an etymological and green language perspective. Atonement comes from Latin. A, the prefix means to depart from, or to go away from. Tonare means to make noise, to make a din or a great amount of noise. And mens means mind. Atonement, to depart from making noise with the mind. To create harmony with the mind, in other words. Not disharmony, not discord, but accordance. To create accord with the mind. In other words, to become at oneness in the mind. At one mind. Right in the word. Atonement. At one mind. And what we really are talking about is we are at one with the mind of creation because we understand fully natural law and we are using our willpower to stand in that truth and engage it